topic is when it's time to print. So as you know, we are a paperless system, but obviously there will come a time when you need to print some information out of the system. And it might seem like a bit of a mundane subject, how to print, but you'd be surprised. There are a lot of very cool hidden printing features that you can take advantage of within Pipeline. Alrighty. So whether you need to print a checklist to take to a meeting, or maybe print it out a display to discuss during a meeting, or share with a contact or a staff or what have you, we'll cover that so that you can get this information. Alrighty. Okay, so let me hop over to Pipeline. All right, so as you, I'm sure, are aware, obviously, I'm going to start over on reports. If you need to generate a report, in a lot of cases, you may need to actually print it because, again, you may take it to a meeting or whatever you need it for, need to analyze it just offline. So running your reports is pretty straightforward. Not really going to dive into that, other than to say that if you are running a report that's, let's say, on your screen, right, one that generates a report on your screen, you can print that just using your printer's browser. And if you're running a report that gets downloaded, you download it and then print that from your whatever application you open it in. Typically, it's a spreadsheet, Excel, or whatever you actually run it in. Alrighty, so straightforward there. Same deal for if you need to print a doc out for whatever reason. You can come to the doc, either open it in its original, click Open Original Doc to open it in its app and then print it from there. Alternatively, you can actually print it from here if you were to highlight it and then print selection. Actually, let's go print, highlight, and then print. And then say more settings. You can print selection only, and it'll print that doc for you right from Pipeline. Okay, we'll get into print selection quite a bit, but just to kind of start you out there with that basic way to print a doc without actually leaving a Pipeline, you can do it that way. Alrighty. Okay, so let's get into the ways that you can print information that's kind of displayed on Pipeline. Okay, so and again, commonly you may need to print that doc or print a report, certainly a regular thing you do, but from a printing perspective, in a lot of cases, you need to generate information that's just displayed on your screen, whether it's these checklists or information from the transaction up top, etc. So that's primarily what we'll be covering going forward. Okay. So I mentioned checklists. That's probably the top bit of information that people want to generate and print out so that they can share or basically process it offline with others or themselves. So I'm going to start with checklists. Okay. So let's say you just wanted to generate the information that's on a checklist. You just wanted to print the information that's on a checklist. So I'm on a transaction right now, but I'm going to hop over to using another tab. I'm going to hop over to admin and then go to our checklist templates, right? And then go into one of them. And from here, if I wanted to, I could highlight and print just this information. But the most efficient way is when I'm on the checklist list here, using the little gear icon over here, I can download the template. And that's going to create a cleaner version of the template for me in a spreadsheet format. Let's go ahead and save that. And then I can print it from there. So let's go to Open. And here I can see that information in a spreadsheet format. Okay, and I can obviously format it however I want to, adding borders, etc. Okay, but so that's the cleanest way to print just a straight list, one that hasn't been added to a transaction, hasn't been processed yet, etc. Okay, but typically I really want the information as it's been actually worked on, right? After activity has happened, items have been checked off, etc. Right? So once it's been added to the transaction and is being processed. So this is typically what I want to print. So there are a few ways of doing that. First is if I just use my browser's print function to print the entire transaction, right? So I'm just going to do Control P to use my browser's print function. And Pipeline has been designed so that the checklists print first, knowing that that's typically what people are wanting to utilize. That comes out first and on a separate page than the rest of the transaction. Okay, so right away, I've got a list here of all of my tasks, whether they've been checked off or not, whether the entire checklist is complete, etc. Okay, so clean way of getting that with all of its activity that's happened thus far. All righty. Second way is what I mentioned a little earlier when I was talking about print selection when we were printing that doc off of the screen, and that's print selection. Print selection is so valuable. I would say I probably use print selection half of the time I'm printing. It allows you to select something on the page and then just print what you've selected. So basically allowing you to be, not to repeat the word, but be selective, right? I only want to print certain information, which again, in my case is like half the time. I don't need all of the information on the page. I just need some of it. So in this case, where if I just wanted to print the checklist, I would highlight that and then print selection. So to highlight it, it's a little bit different for checklists here because there's so much repositioning and functionality that goes on within the checklist that that prevent you from being able to select it as easily as you would to select something else on the page. In other words, since I need to drag these around, selecting is not an option within the checklists. So to select the checklists, I would need to come up here at the top where it says checklists, make sure that my my cursor is right before the C there, and then highlight the whole thing. Actually, really, I only need to highlight any part of the checklist here. You can't see the highlight as I'm going down, but I'm still holding down my mouse button and dragging, right? So I'll start here again so you can see I'm slowly dragging, I'm coming down, I'm still highlighting, okay? And I can let go anywhere within that checklist and then do my print function. Control P, that was, by the way. And then say more settings, and then selection only. And it will print just my checklists, nice and clean. Okay, so that's a second way of doing that. Again, if you don't mind the rest of the transaction printing out afterwards, you could just print the whole entire transaction and just pay attention to the first couple of, or first page or a couple of pages that include only the checklist information. Okay, cool deal there. All right. And then the last way to get information from your checklists printed and gives you a little more flexibility regarding which of the checklists you want to be included is to mail them to yourself or to include them in a note/email. So let me click note/email. And as you know, because we cover it all the time, you can drag and drop individual checklist items there, including ones that are already checked off. Right? Or in this case, where let's say you wanted to share a lot of checklist information, including full checklists, you can just drag the entire checklist. Okay, so here I've got whether it's been checked off or not, similar to what I got in my previous printout, but I get an added bonus here because it includes, excuse me, all the activity, excuse me, all the activity associated with each task. So in this case, for example, I've got the due date rule, which is 5 days before close. I'll see when anyone has checked off an item, right? Checked off by Hollis on the date, etc. So I get a lot more activity associated with the checklist when I do it this way, if I'd like that, right? And so then in this case, you can't print from within a field. Your browser just doesn't allow that. But I could at this point either add it as a note or send it to myself, right? Let's add it as a note. If I add it as a note, now I can come down here, highlight it, right? And then print that, and then print my selection. Okay, so then I've got just my checklist items. I've got all that detail that I mentioned by doing it this way, including whether it's been checked off or not. Okay. So just another way of grabbing that, oops, I forgot to get that last line. Another way of grabbing that checklist information and printing it. Okie dokie. Okay, so that's it for checklists. Let's look at information on the transaction. And what you'll probably start to gather here is that pretty much all of the layouts in Pipeline have been designed specifically to print nicely. Right? We're a paperless system, but we know you're going to need to print at certain times. So it's designed to not include the left-hand menus if you don't need them. It's designed to display the information that you're seeing nicely. Like I said earlier, the checklists appear first. We know you want to see those. So everything's really been manufactured so that when you do print it, it processes it and displays it in the way that you need to see it. Okay, and that is certainly true for the transaction. So you saw a moment ago when I printed was trying to get the checklist to come out first, I printed the whole transaction. So let's print that again so that you can see it. So when I print my transaction, I'm obviously on a transaction now. First, it prints the checklists as we saw, then it prints the transaction information, and then it'll print the docs. Notice how it bumps the docs to a new page here, right? That way, if you wanted to process the document separately and didn't want the other information seen, or you're going to send that information out and separate the pages, you've got it in that fashion, okay? Notice one thing here. Actually, let me reprint this. Let me collapse this contact section here and then print it. Notice that when you're printing, it honors whether any section is collapsed. So if you didn't want the contacts to be displayed because you're sending this to someone where you didn't want to expose the contacts, or same for probably not the case for the list for the agents, but if you wanted to do so, again, any section that's collapsed. And particularly if you've got the commission module, there'll be some sensitive financial information there. You can collapse that as well. Anything that can be collapsed will be suppressed when you go to print it, obviously. Okay. So let me go ahead and cancel that. So again, just nicely formatted, so similar to how it's laid out on the page, so that it's easy to read, etc. Okay. Last two notes about transactions is just like you can print selection with the checklists. Same for anywhere in pipeline, including these transactions. So if I really just wanted to print out the contacts, I could do so, highlight them, print, more settings, selection only, and you'll see it'll just print those contacts. I'm in Chrome, by the way. This is Chrome's way of doing it, is more to select more settings and then selection only. If you use Firefox, I believe to do print selection, you would right click, and then there's a print selection option underneath when you right click. But again, this is primarily in Chrome. Okay, so anyway, just again, using more settings and print selection when you just want to print part of what you're seeing, including on this transactions page. Okay, and then last thing about transactions I want to show you is received messages or received emails. Okay, so when you've got multiple emails here and you want to print them, you can just expand them. So if you've got tons of emails here and you want to print the thread in into one printout, you can do that. So I've expanded them. And then I can print. This has just got two, but you can get the idea, right? Then you can print all those messages into one printout. Okay. Likewise, if I wanted to send these out somewhere, this is a good segue into the next section, which is that you can print to PDF for anything that you're printing. So Microsoft has a save as PDF option. And most browsers, I'm in Chrome right now, have that as well. So when it's, and I believe Edge and I guess IE probably would be the Microsoft ones that have the save PDF. So pretty much if you're in most browsers, you'll have a save as PDF option. And that way, when you save this, it's going to save it as a document, and then you can mail that out or print it later. You can be using this to consolidate the messages into a single doc, etc. Okay, so a huge applicability for converting your printout to a PDF. Pretty much, if you can see it, you can print it, and you can save it as a PDF. Alrighty. Okay, that's it for transactions. On to our that's it for a transaction. Now on to our transactions list. Like I mentioned, Pipeline, again, formats all of these lists nicely, including suppressing the menus so you don't get the extra space taken with those when you don't need it. And again, just using your browser's print function. I go to print. It prints it nicely, right? I've got all the information, nothing terribly finessed about this other than, well, we have because it looks nice and clean, but we make sure it fits on a single page. It does things that you don't even think about so that when you, in the end, you've got this nice clean list. Okay. Same for tasks, right? I go to print that. I've got a nice list there. And again, you can save all of these as PDFs if you wanted to, or you could just go to print them. Okay. And then all of our other pages as well. Unassigned behaves very similarly. I print that. I see those items as well. Okay. Likewise, I could, if I wanted to, just print some of these. If I wanted to start here, so I get the title and print some of these, I can do a print selection for those. Obviously, that, you know, the benefit of these lists and printing them afterwards is that you can filter them first, search or filter to get just the information that you want to print and then print them, right? Printing these whole lists isn't going to be as useful as when you're getting just the information that you need, no matter which page you're on, transactions, tasks, etc. Okay, unreviewed behaves the same, right? I can print that out, get that same clean list of information. Reports we've already gone over, and same for reference. If you've got your library of information and you just want to print it out, see where it's at, maybe scribble on it and see how you want to move things around, you can print that out as well. And just keep in mind again that it's going to honor whether something is collapsed or not. So if you want to print everything, uncollapse this. Okay. And then the last page, last but not least, is the home page, right? If you wanted to just get that super high level view of what's going on, you can print that. It prints nicely as well. Again, suppressing the menu items so that they don't interfere with the space that you need. Alrighty, and again, honoring whether something's collapsed or not. So if you wanted to expand those and print that out, you could do that as well. All right, and that is it for printing.